a very interesting presentation by Professor Sasaki Ryuji about his new book translated into English, originally published in Japan and also translated into Korean. So the new book, the title of the new book is the, let me see. A New Introduction to Karl Marx, New Materialism, Critique of Political Economy, and the Concept of Metabolism, published by Palgrave this year. So that book was translated into Korean. Yeah. Can you see?
Okay.
Yeah. So Professor Sasaki is associate professor at Rikkyo University in Japan. And he published lots of books about Karl Marx and new interpretation of Marx's work. So interestingly, 2 years ago, when I visited Kyoto, in a bookstore, I bought a book. This book. Yeah. Oh, it's, can you see? Yeah, the title is Marx Theory of Fetishism or Reification. It's a very interesting book. So today his topic is also related with Marx's method and the meaning of reification. And so the structure of the first part and other parts of Das Kapital. So first, Professor Sasaki Ryuji, give us your presentation about 40 minutes. Then let's talk freely with other participants and so on. So please start your presentation. Thank you.
Okay. Hello, I'm Ryuji Sasaki. Thank you for your kind introduction. I show PowerPoint. Can you see?
Yeah. Okay.
Okay. Today, I'm going to talk about Marx's method and the theoretical structure of capital. In February of this year, my book, A New Introduction to Karl Marx, was published by Palgrave. This book is in English translation of my Japanese book, Karl Marx, published by Japanese publisher Chikuma Shobo in 2016. The Japanese original version has gotten 6 printing. This book has also been translated into Korean by Songjin Jeong. This book is an introduction to Marx theory, focusing on his main work, Capital. But this book also contains an explanation of young Marx's theoretical ideas, such as materialism and alienation. The content of Capital is explained in Chapter 2, which is preceded in Chapter 1 by a look at the ideas of the young Marx. Moreover, this book also deals with the theoretical development of Marx in later years. Metabolism is a key concept to understand Marx's theoretical development in his later years. In Chapter 3 of this book, I try to clarify the theoretical endeavors of his final years. Based on the most recent research on Marx's manuscripts and notes, such as Kohei Saito, Kevin Anderson, and Heather Brown. This English edition includes 2 appendices. These appendices are not included in the original Japanese book or Korean translation. Appendix A deals with Marx theoretical methodology. Appendix B looks at the theoretical structure of Book 1 of Capital. The appendices are an opportunity to explain in more theoretical terms some points that could not be treated in detail within the book main text, given its introductory nature. Today, I will talk about Marx's theoretical method, which is explained in the two appendices. My interpretation of Marx's method is based on previous studies by Japanese scholars who are not well known to English-speaking readers. And I tried to develop them to be more coherent. So I think my talk will give a glimpse of how Marx has been interpreted in Japan. This slide shows the contents of my presentation. First, we discuss three aspects of Marx's method: new materialism, labor form, and economic determination form, and the concept of metabolism. After that, I will talk about the theoretical structure of part 1 of book 1 of Capital. Before discussing Marx's method concretely, I would like to talk about the meaning of the method I speak of here. In my opinion, Marx's method is not a philosophy that can be universally applied to everything. This interpretation is in opposition to most interpretations, such as Engels or Althusser or humanist interpretation and so on. However, in fact, Marx opposed the all-purpose formula of a general historical philosophical theory whose supreme virtue consists in being supra-historical. For example, Marx's theory of reification is something that emerges from the particular logic of the capitalist mode of production, not from some philosophical perspective of an a priori theory of reification. So why do we need to focus on Marx's method? This is because Marx's method is much less in evidence in Capital as a result of trying to make Capital easier for the general public to understand. If we hope to correctly grasp the theoretical structure of Capital, we must examine this method and use it as an auxiliary line. Now, I would like to talk about Marx's fundamental method, new materialism. Marx wrote in Thesis Feuerbach the standpoint of the old materialism is civil society. In this context, the term of civil society means bourgeois society. And the standpoint of the new materialism is human society or social humanity. In this context, human society or social humanity means socialism or communism. I want to consider the question of what is new materialism Marx wrote here. I think Marx's new materialism have three characteristics. First, his new materialism is linked to a practical conception of transforming society. The young Marx, who began his theoretical endeavors under the influence of the young Hegelians, initially shared their Enlightenment stance of seeking to change consciousness through ideas. However, through various studies and experiences, Marx concluded in a contribution to the critique of Hegel's philosophy of right in introduction that revolutions require a passive element, a material basis, so that they can be realized in the people only insofar as it is the realization of the needs of the people. Marx thus shifted toward seeking the basis for social transformation in the real life of human beings rather than in ideas, as later Marx wrote in the German ideology. The condition of this, that is a communist movement, result from the now existing premise. The second key characteristic of Marx's new materialism is that it is in essence a critique of the Enlightenment approach. Not only did Marx break away from his earlier Enlightenment position, but he launched a positive critique of it in theses on Feuerbach. There, he criticized the fundamental flaw inherent in the Enlightenment approach, which seeks to transform society by changing people's incorrect consciousness in the basis of certain ideas. Marx wrote in theses on Feuerbach, Feuerbach's work consists in resolving the religious world into its secular basis. But that the secular basis detaches itself from itself and establishes itself as an independent realm in the crowds can only be explained by the cleavages and the self-contradictions within this secular basis. The latter must therefore in itself be both understood in its contradiction and revolutionized in practice. Feuerbach sought to liberate human beings by criticizing religious illusions through his praise of sensuous human and species being. But it proves impossible to transform society by changing human consciousness on the basis of such ideas, since every idea is itself a product of actual relations that cannot exert an autonomous force separate from its real foundation. In order for us to change society, we must instead transform the practical relations that constitute the real foundation for generating ideas. The materialistic question to ask is not what is an illusion secular foundation, but rather why and how the illusion was generated from its secular foundation. The standpoint of Marx's new materialism is this focus on why and how. He later explained in the first volume of Capital. It is in reality much easier to discover by analysis the earthly kernel of the mystic creations of religion than to do the opposite, i.e. that develop from the actual given relations of life, the forms in which these have been absolutized. The latter method is the only materialist and therefore the only scientific one. The third characteristic of new materialism is that it criticizes the old materialism that is based on the standpoint of bourgeois society. In thesis on Feuerbach, Marx explained that the highest point reached by intuitive materialism, that is materialism which does not comprehend sensuousness as practical activity, is intuition of separate individuals and of society. Here, Marx seems to have in mind how Feuerbach merely exalts sensuous intuition over religious illusion, overlooking the sensuous praxis that reproduces and transforms the living environment. And if we adopt a theoretical standpoint that overlooks the sensuous praxis of human beings, which continually reproduces the real social relations, we end up, even if based on materialism, taking the existing relations for granted. This in turn makes it impossible to go beyond the standpoint of those relations, which is the standpoint of separate private individuals, i.e. the standpoint of bourgeois society. Existing relations can only be transformed by transforming the life praxis individuals, not through the Enlightenment activities of philosophers. As Marx points out, the coincidence of the changing of the circumstances and of human activity or self-change can be conceived and rationally understood only as revolutionary practice. The possibility of such revolutionary practice is conditioned by human activities and environment reproduced through those activities. Thus, only the theoretical method of new materialism, which asks the question, why and how, can clarify the possibility of and the conditions for social transformations. In sum, the new materialism seeks the ultimate basis for transforming society with the living process of human beings, aims to transform the activities of life that continually reproduce the existing relations, and clarifies the possibility of and the condition for such revolutionary praxis by fundamental considering why and how the current relation exists. This materialistic view of society is precisely what led Marx to grasp society on the basis of labor, because the activity of labor lies at the root of the human activity. Next, I'd like to explain Marx's method regarding labor form and economic determination of form. Marx wrote in Grundrisse that definite production thus determines definite consumption, distribution, exchange, and definite relations of these different moments to one another. In other words, according to Marx, the social form of people's material reproduction, i.e. the production relations, is determined by the form of labor. In fact, follows, I'd like to discuss in more detail the relationship between labor form and production relation. In the first phrase, why does labor have a social form? This is because laboring individuals exist under certain social conditions. The starting point is the labor of individuals who exist under certain social conditions formed historically. These social conditions posit their labor with a certain social form. And this labor having a social form formed and reproduced a certain production relationship. In capitalist mode of production, wage labor or private labor produced economic determination, thereby forming capitalist production relations or commodity production relations. Please see the table on this slide. The labor form of private labor generates commodity form and value form, thereby forming commodity production relations. And likewise, the labor form of wage labor generates capital, thereby forming capitalist production relations. Here, we should note the difference between social conditions and social relations. The social conditions are continually reproduced by labor as the production relations. However, unlike the production relations, the social conditions are not social relations formed by laboring individuals, but rather a historical formed presupposition for these individuals, which constitutes an element of their labor. Marx wrote in Grundrisse, if it is said that since production must begin with a certain distribution of the instruments of production, it follows that its distribution, at least in this sense, precedes and forms the presupposition of production. Then the reply must be that production does indeed have its determinants and the preconditions which form its moments. Please see the table on this slide. Labor form on the one hand reproduce social conditions, and on the other hand the labor having a labor form forming homes and reproduces economic determinations of home and production relations. And primitive accumulation of capital created a social condition, and the social conditions constitute the labor form. The social conditions constitute moments of labor. As we can see from this argument, the foundation of capitalist production is not the property form of the means of production, but labor with a certain social form. Let's take a closer look at this point. I will now read out page 176 of Appendix A of my book, partially. For example, the exclusionary ownership of the means of production by capitalists and landowners constitutes the social condition that posits labor with specific social formal determination as wage labor. But that is not the foundation of production relations, because such specific social condition can only be reproduced through the specific labor form of wage labor. Granted, the specific social conditions themselves are created through historical process such as the primitive accumulation of capital that generated capitalist exclusionary ownership of the means of production. Nevertheless, what reproduces social condition is the specific form of labor. Social condition could not be reproduced without labor being carried out in a specific form. This is precisely why society must be grasped on the foundation of labor, rather than on the basis of the social conditions that are its prerequisite. This is also why social condition must be seen a moment of labor carried out in specific social form. If one were instead to view social condition as the foundation of production relations, it would mean that same form of labor would always be generated, and therefore the same production relations would always be reproduced. One would have no choice in that case but to look outside the production of the production relation for motive force to transform the mode of production, such as some idea or political power. That sort of perspective is obviously different than the new materialism of Marx, who sought the basis for social transformations in the contradiction and friction within the people's life processes, and aims to transform living practice itself. The precise reason that Marx looked to an association of wage workers rather than some idea or political power as crucial to overcoming capitalism is that he identified the deepest foundation of this mode of production as a specific form of labor, not the social condition that formed the prerequisite of labor. This manner of starting from life praxis and labor in particular, rather than static social condition, i.e. property, is a consistent approach throughout Marx's entire critique of political economy, starting from economic and philosophical manuscripts, where his outlook was expressed abstractly in the concept of alienated labor up to the works of his later years. Next, I'd like to look at the concept of metabolism. Marx defines labor as, first of all, a process between man and nature, a process by which man, through his own action, mediates, regulates, and controls the metabolism between himself and nature. In the term of metabolism, it should be evident that labor is the starting point, the material life process, because it determines the manner of the metabolism between human beings and nature. Therefore, a labor form has a significant impact on material metabolism. In particular, the nature of labor changes significantly depending on whether it is carried out as communal labor within community or as wage labor carried out by property-less workers hired by capitalists. This difference in the form of labor exerts a huge influence on the character of production technologies, thus leading to enormous changes in the metabolism between human beings and nature. Since the movement of capital organizes the material world in the line with its own abstract logic of valorization, it inevitably is consistent with and is inconsistent with and causes disruption to the various concrete metabolisms. But it is not the case that the metabolism is only one directionally organized and disrupted according to the logic of capital. Both value and capital always require some materials as their bearer. No matter how capital might seek to organize the material world in a manner that best suits itself by using the purely social power of value, It is constantly constrained by the logic of metabolism and ultimately pulled back by it. Therefore, Marx regards metabolism as the ultimate basis for social transformation. No matter how deeply people are penetrated by the logic of capitalism, they must ultimately defend the metabolism in order to safeguard their own existence. Marx identified this logic of metabolism opposing the logic of capitalism as the ultimate basis for social transformation. Next, I want to talk about the theoretical structure of part 1 of book 1 of Capital. Appendix B deals with entire book 1, but due to time constraints, here I will discuss only part 1, commodity and money. First, let's consider chapter 1, the commodity. Regarding relationship between private labor and commodity production, I already explained it. Within that commodity production, an inverted relationship is established, wherein the relation of labor appears as relation between things, and the movement of things determines people's actions. This is the reification of production relations. Moreover, the reification of production relations generates the inverted cognition that products have the power of value as a natural attribute. This is fetishism. Next, I discuss chapter 2, the process of exchange. This chapter deals with the personification, reified things. The term reified thing here mean things are having an economic determination of form, such as commodity, money, capital. Commodity production relations cannot be established without the subject actions of human beings based on their will and desire. Commodities and money require personal bearers, and human beings act as their personal bearers. This is the personification of reified things. When human beings act as personal bearers of commodity and money, a change is brought about in their desire for things and their manner of acknowledging property. The logic of the economic determination of form, which is created unconsciously by the private producers themselves, in turn changes human desires and the nature of property. Like the case of reification, an illusion arises from the personification of reified things. This is the illusion that freedom, equality, and property are the personal bearers of commodities and money, are somehow equivalent to the fundamental concepts of freedom, equality, property. Tainosuke Otani calls this illusion Homo economicus illusion. So I also call it Homo economicus illusion, according to Otani. Next, I would like to discuss chapter 3. Chapter 3 in Capital examines how money actually functions under community production relations premised on the elucidation of the genesis of money in the first two chapters. In order for money to function as a measure of value, as a means of circulation, and as a means of payment, and so on, it is necessary to have institutions and laws mediate between reified things and persons or the material world. For example, in order for money to function as a measure of value, the measurement standard of money must be unified within national boundaries. Since the standard of money is on the one hand purely conventional, while on the other hand it must possess universal validity, it is in the end of regulated by law. Also, like the case of fetishism and homo economicus illusion, institutions and laws generate juridical illusion and institutional illusion. Marx used the term of juridical illusion, but he didn't use institutional illusion. This is the illusion that the attributes of reified things and modern property rights are generated by the institutions and the laws themselves. Of course, in fact, the attributes of reified things are generated by private labor or wage labor. Modern property rights are generated by wills of personal bearers of commodities and money. Finally, I want to explain relations between the three aspects. There are two important points. First, the three aspects are not parallel to each other, but rather in a layered relation of determination. That is, the first aspect, reification, determines the second aspect, personification of reified things. The first aspect and the second aspect determine the third aspect, institutions and the laws. Second, each of the three aspects generates the following cognitive inversion: fetishism, the form economicus illusion, and juridical and institutional illusion. Please see table B.2, logical structure of part 1 of chapter. I would like to finish my talk by summarizing the main points. First, new materialism as a critique of philosophy is at the core of Marx's method. Second, the foundation of capitalist mode of production is not the ownership of the means of production by capitalists, but labor with a certain social form. That is private labor and wage labor. Third, the ultimate basis for social transformation is the disturbance of metabolism by capital. Fourth, the power of institutions and laws must be not overestimated. What matters is the labor. What matters is labor form and the power of reification generated by private labor and wage labor. This is the reason why Marx emphasizes the importance of associations of wage workers. In this talk, I couldn't talk about the details. I hope you will read my book, New Introduction to Karl Marx. Thank you for your attention.
Okay, thank you very much. Yeah, it's very interesting presentation. And so thank you for your time management. So if any participants have any question, write down your questions in the chatting room or turn on your microphone and speak directly. Any questions? Not yet. So before we have any questions from participants, let me begin with my questions. Two questions for Professor Sasaki. One is about your usage of labor form, and the second is about the kind of institutional illusion. The first question is you emphasize the determination of labor form, the determination of social relations by labor form. So this concept of determination is sometimes very strong, and it has its own kind of philosophical connotation. So what do you mean by determination by labor form? About for determination of social relations by labor form, what does labor form determine what? Yeah, what's the relationship between labor form and the result determined something? And that's my first question. And second question is about the institutions. It's interesting because you mentioned the illusion of institutions in chapter 3 about money form. And so, but I cannot understand fully about your ideas because in some aspects it seems you seem to compare institutional illusion with money-fetishism at the same level. That means sometimes in my idea, that kind of illusion of institutions are just a result of money-fetishism. So another aspect of the some phenomenon. But for example, in the case, I think another theoreticians, Marxist theoreticians, Afghani Pashkanis, yeah, here emphasizes law form, but when he emphasizes law form, main reference is about the chapter 2, not chapter 3, exchange relations, because in his idea, the money form and law form are two different aspects that support capitalist relations. But I think in some aspects, your idea is a little bit different from Pashkani's idea on form. So can you explain your some differences and similarities with Pashkani's idea? Yeah, that's my questions.
Thank you for your interesting question. First, regarding first question, determines sounds very strong, but here, the term of determination is limited. Here, important is determination of form. Determination of form can't determine everything. For example, personal activities and metabolism is limited by a certain determination of form. I think the relationship between form and determination. Regarding second point, basically I agree Pachkani's argument, but I think chapter 2 and chapter 3 need to be distinguished theoretically. Marx in chapter 2 deals with the relationship about right, not the law. Marx didn't mention in chapter 2 law. In chapter 2, Marx didn't mention law. Marx deals with relation of will or relation of right, I think. On the other hand, in chapter 3, Marx deals with laws or and customs, and customs. Regarding customs, I use the term institutions. I use the term on the basis of regulation school, the arguments.
Okay, thank you for your reply. And we have two questions from two participants. One is from Michael Charter, and the second one is from Seung-Jin Jung. And can you read the questions in the chatting room?
Okay.
Yeah. Let me read first questions. Could you explain a little bit more about the concept of a revolutionary praxis? Does this just mean transformative praxis? Second question, you pointed out how Marx was critical of the Enlightenment approach and that he saw the basis for social transformation in the disturbance of metabolism. But what is Marx's view of the role of human consciousness in social revolution?
Thank you. Thank you for good question, Mihail. Regarding question one, revolutionary. The concept of revolutionary praxis is very wide, very big, and to explain it is very difficult. But for example, activities by trade union, strike, and demonstration, and all can be revolutionary praxis. Revolutionary praxis is something to something that alter the mode of life. I think. Regard question 2. I also think human consciousness in a social revolution is very significant. But human consciousness is not a basis for transforming society or forming social relation. This is the core of Marx method, Marx theoretical method, I think.
Okay, and we have questions from Seung-Jin Jung. It's a long question, and so Seung-Jin, could you read your questions? Turning on your microphone.
Okay. Ryuji, could you see my comments in the chat?
Yes.
Oh, yes. Great. Thank you very much for the great talk. I think your presentation on Marx method, focusing on and linking the concepts of reification and metabolism, extremely original and interesting. So I learned very much from your book that I translated and today's talk. I have 3 questions. First, regarding page 176 of your book that you quoted today, I'm wondering whether your understanding of the relation between the specific form of wage labor and the social form or social condition is close to circularism. So what do you think? And second, you seem to prioritize, emphasize the importance of the transformation of life praxis of individuals or the specific form of labor, rather than the objective social conditions or relations of production. You also mentioned institutions. I'm wondering whether it might lead to some sort of communitarianism or lifestyle politics. So what do you think? And so I agree with your critique of institutional illusion. I think that illusion shared by theorists of, MMT. So it's just, I'm wondering whether related with that, what is your opinion on basic income approach? Thank you.
Thank you for a very interesting question. Regarding first question, I don't think it is circular reasoning. Can I use PowerPoint?
Okay.
Can you see?
Yeah.
Okay. This table shows labor form economic. This slide shows the relationship between labor form and economic determinations of form and social conditions. This is a little complex, rather very complicated, but clearly, Marx repeatedly wrote the starting point is labor, our production. And therefore, I think labor form must be the starting point. Why must labor form be starting point? Regarding this, I wrote in 176. I wrote in page 176. The right side, middle. Sorry. This manner of studying from life praxis and labor in particular, rather than static social condition, is in the consistent approach throughout Marx's entire critique of political economy. Marx didn't start from the static state, static social conditions. Marx always start from praxis, activity. This is Marx's theoretical method. This is your first and second question. This is the answer to first and second questions. And sorry, regarding second question, communitarianism, lifestyle politics. I think communitarianism or lifestyle politics can be a socialist or communist movement as a moment. But communitarianism itself or lifestyle politics itself is not a socialist movement or a communist movement because they don't aim to transform a bourgeois society, a capitalist mode of production. Communitarianism and lifestyle politics is the attempt to live in good way within a capitalist society. Third question. and thank you, your agreement. I precisely when writing this illusion, I have in mind MMT or basic income. About basic income, I wrote a Japanese book. There is no the book. That's no book. Basic income, of course, basic income is a means to facilitate socialist movement and communist movement, but basic income itself is not socialist. Is not socialist means or communist means. Basic income is very limited influence to capitalist mode of production. Regarding MMT, the present situation, especially under the present situation, especially in Japan, inflation cannot take place in Japan, unlike United States or EU. Therefore, in Japan, MMT is MMT is understood. I understand MMT's policy, but theoretically, MMT is the communist or socialist policy. I think resulting in inflation or a financial bubble. Therefore, MMT is not answer to this situation.
Okay, and we have another question from Julia in the chatting room. Let me read. It's a short question, so let me read the question. Could you explain us the relationship between private labor and value form of such labor? That is to say, why should labor take the value form and not measure it directly, say in units of labor times, for instance?
Okay, thank you for your question. This is a task of the theory of value form. Today I didn't deal with value form. And first, private labor cannot have a direct social character. Therefore, private labor is able to have social character by mediation of commodity especially commodities value of commodity, value of commodity. And second, here value is not value is invisible. Value is a phantom-like objectivity, and we don't touch value. We don't grasp value. Value is invisible. Therefore, a value value must be expressed by another commodity, by another commodity's use value, and this is a value. Okay, the value home and the value of commodity. Commodities value is expressed by another commodity's use value, and another commodity's use value is the embodiment of value, and this is because another commodity is written or placed on first commodities tag, and thereby gaining directly social power, directly social extendable character, and therefore another commodity is the embodiment of value. This is my interpretation of value home.
Okay, thank you. And I have another final question about the idea of metabolism. It's very important concept, Marx's final stage. So what's the benefit of this concept, metabolism, compared with the concept of crisis? Usually in his lifetime, Marx always used the concept of economic crisis, social crisis. So crisis shows the kind of internal logic of contradiction. But in some aspects, the idea of metabolism seems to show a kind of external relationship between system and environment. So what do you think of the main benefit to use this idea of metabolism to interpret the contemporary crisis of capitalist societies?
Okay. I can't find this question in chat room. Okay. Okay. I focus in my research of Marx. I focus the concept of metabolism 12 years ago. This is because I edited Marx Engels Gesamtausgabe, section 4, volume 18, and edited by Otani Teinosuke Otani, Kohei Saito, and me, and Hideto Akashi, etc. Yeah, I noticed the significance of metabolism when I editing Marx excerpt note from 1864 to 1868. Marx accepted many books of agriculture and chemistry and many science of the book, and I 1864 from 1864 to 1868. Marx wrote and completed Capital Volume 1. He published Capital Volume 1 in 1867. At that time, Marx studied very many he studied many books on agriculture and chemistry, and this fact surprised me. I'm surprised. In the end, I focus on the concept of metabolism, and Kohei Saito developed my idea to write his great book, Karl Marx Eco-Socialism. His book is very interesting. I think Marx study is book best. It is best Marx studies book, I think. And so in 10 years, for 10 years, climate crisis become more serious, and now COVID-19, and this is said to be this is said to take place by capitalist development and neoliberalism policy, and for example, Mike Davis' book. So I think the concept metabolism is most important concept and theory in Marx theory. Therefore, this concept is very useful to analyze the present situation.
Okay, thank you. And we have final short question again from Julia in the chatting room. Is basic income a Keynesian device to stimulate effective demand in a capitalist environment and hence to realize surplus value?
In my opinion, in the stagnation, in the present stagnation of capitalist mode of production, basic income or other Keynesian policy or device cannot stimulate effective demand. Of course, these can stimulate a little, but very limited influence, I think. Recently, I think the capitalist mode of production it becomes a so-called digital feudalism or platform capitalism, and namely, and the present in this present capitalism, rent or factional and fictional capital is very important, more important than surplus value. Surplus value is not at the core of present capitalism. Of course, capitalism always needs surplus value, but in the present capitalism and at the core is rent and financial profit or fictional capital, I think. And in those, under those situations, effective demand becomes less and less, I think. And bourgeoisie and capitalists cannot help but execute basic income policy and I think.
Okay, thank you very much. Now, yeah, okay. So it's time to wrap up today's talk. We have lots of fruitful consequences. So we have still many agendas to discuss further. So I hope we'll have another chance to talk again about your book and your ideas and your arguments. Thank you very much, Professor Sasaki, and thank you for all the participants today. Yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you, Sasaki.